In life we never lose friends, we only learn who our true ones are. Do not befriend someone who cannot restrain their anger or control their desire. Nor, someone who is a liar or who is greedy for this world. So don't give up, my friends, and keep up the spirit of living this life. Professor Cheng, the leader of an oil refinery in the Middle East desert, hired private security services led by former Chinese military force Luo Feng to escort the evacuation of all of her employees out of the desert to a safe place in the Green Zone. Airplanes have been prepared in the Green Zone. They tried to avoid the mercenary forces that had surrounded them for 2 weeks with the aim of Professor Cheng handing over the oil refinery to them. All access roads around that place have been controlled by mercenary forces, so the only way is through the Highway of Death, which is a former dangerous war area where many people have died and there are still many active mines scattered around. On the day of departure, the refinery system was shut down by Professor Cheng. She left the dongle and bag with her employee Dr. Mei, who is also Luo Feng's daughter. 11 buses were prepared. Professor Cheng and her assistant, who is also her son, were on the number 8 bus, while Dr. Mei was on the number 1 bus with Luo Feng. It seems that Dr. Mei and Luo Feng's relationship is complicated because Dr. Mei feels that her father is more concerned with state duties than her mother, who was lying in the hospital and eventually died. A spy tagged the number 8 bus. On the way, Luo Feng suspected that there was an unnatural sandstorm and immediately the communication system was cut off. Apparently, the mercenary forces hijacked the number 8 and 11 buses out of Luo Feng's team's path. It turned out that it was Chris Henry and their group who hijacked the bus. This man is Chris, who is also a former Marine and works as a private contractor. Chris has been living in a village in the desert for a long time and helps care for orphans. Actually, Chris didn't want to take part in the mission, but because he needed money to build a clean water system in his village, Chris decided to join the mission. This man is Owen, a friend of Chris who wants to help build a clean water system at a very high cost. Henry, who is Chris' younger brother, lies to Chris that the people on the hijacked bus are financing the rebels who once ambushed them and killed their father. Chris was very disappointed and even more surprised that it was Owen, a friend of Chris's, who had hired them. Owen became greedy to get rich by stealing oil. Owen offered Chris a high fee and a clean water system for his village, but Chris, who upholds the value of truth, refused his friend's offer and decided to withdraw from the mission. Owen kills Henry and sends his corpse to the radio tower. Luo Feng and Dr. Mei, who were familiar with the area, took a helicopter to trace the route to find the missing bus. While other buses continued their journey to the Green Zone, they saw a jet-engined car being used to push sand, creating artificial sandstorms. Luo Feng found the hijacked bus and its passengers. Owen's men took 5 people, including Professor Cheng and her son. Luo Feng saw Chris on his way and followed him to the village. Luo Feng asked Professor Cheng's whereabouts and followed him all the way to his base, the radio tower. Chris was surprised to see Henry's corpse there. Chris noticed Luo Feng's presence following him all the way to the radio tower, and a fight broke out. Luo Feng thought Chris killed his men, but Chris said that it was Owen and his men who killed Luo Feng's men and Henry. From then on, Luo Feng and Chris teamed up to catch up with Owen and his men. At the oil refinery, Owen forces Professor Cheng to drain the oil by killing the hostages. Millions of barrels of oil can flow through underground pipelines to tankers. However, the system cannot be turned on without the dongle in Professor Cheng's bag. Then they tracked Professor Cheng's cell phone in Chris's village. There was a fight in the village. Luo Feng and Chris tried to work together against the enemy using the finger code, but because they didn't understand, the cooperation was still messed up. Out of urgency, Chris finally gave what Owen's men asked for, namely Professor Cheng's bag. Luo Feng and Chris used a jet engine car to drive through the factory's entrance, while Dr. Mei followed them from behind using Chris' favorite car. At the refinery, Luo Feng and Chris had been very good at working together against their enemies. They climbed the stairs to the control room to save Professor Cheng. A fight ensues between Luo Feng, Chris, and the tattoo face of Owen's men. When Owen was about to leave the factory, Chris and Dr. Mei decided to chase Owen. Meanwhile, Luo Feng fights the tattoo face and manages to beat him. The flow of oil couldn't be stopped because the dongle was tampered with, so Luo Feng chased Owen in a jet engine car. Chris and Dr. Mei chase Owen up the road at top speed. However, because Chris's car was old, it was difficult for them to go through extreme roads. Chris expressed his sadness because his beloved car was destroyed. Chris and Dr. May meet Luo Feng and continue their pursuit in a jet engine car. Chris activates the jet engine and crashes into Owen's group's tanker cars, destroying his entire fleet. Owen still manages to escape while Chris closes a fuel line leak and dangles as the jet engine starts running to chase Owen. They manage to ram Owen's vehicle but are unable to stop the jet's engine and they plunge into the abyss. Owen was not saved while Luo Feng and Dr. May managed to save themselves on the cliff. Dr. May saw the pieces of photos that were put together. It turned out that his father always carried the pieces of photos of Dr. May and her mother with him. Dr. May realized that her father still loves Dr. May and her mother. Just as Luo Feng and Dr. May were sad because they didn't know where Chris was, suddenly Finally, Chris, assisted by Luo Feng and Dr. May, managed to build a clean water system in his village. I fight for my family, my country. Everything has its time. This is the life we choose. Don't look for reasons. Luo Feng. The end. We recommend you watch this film in full. There are many funny scenes and interesting fights that can only be seen if you watch the film in full. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video. Take care of your health wherever you are. See you in another video.